Hello, critical thinkers. In this video, I use my AI companion to provide you with correction officer and lieutenant court testimony in regards to the July 6, 2016 Day of Terror at Mid-State Correctional Facility. Roughly 30 officers were involved in the beatings and sexual abuse of incarcerated individuals at Mid-State Correction. It might be possible some of these names in this video or others involved in the Day of Terror will emerge as the ones who murdered Messiah Nantri. If that's the case, I will keep you informed and I'll keep you updated.
Michael Surprenant. Lieutenant Michael Surprenant testified that he is a lieutenant at Mid-State CF and has worked for DOCCS for 25 years. He was assigned as the watch commander during the July 6th raid on the 4H dorm. As watch commander, he was essentially the shift commander, responsible for overseeing all activity within the facility during his shift. He was made aware of the dorm frisk that morning by DSS Corey. Lieutenant Surprenant testified that other supervisory staff, including Lieutenant Hebel and Sergeant O'Neill, were on the bus prior to the raid. He further testified that he did not give any direction that morning, as Sergeant O'Neill was in charge of running the frisk. Lieutenant Surprenant explained that, in the rush to get to the dorm, the officers left the metal detector behind, so he and Lieutenant Hebel helped carry the equipment up to Unit 4H. He testified that he arrived approximately 5 minutes after the other officers and, upon entering, saw an incarcerated individual in handcuffs being escorted out of the building by Sergeant O'Neill and a couple of officers. He understood that there had been an assault on staff and a use of force. Lieutenant Surprenant testified that he stayed in the dorm for approximately 10 minutes. His understanding of the reason for the raid was that there was information suggesting an incarcerated individual may have assaulted Officer Call with a weapon, and the search was an attempt to find that weapon. One thing that stood out to him during the frisk was that the incarcerated individuals were on the ground in a prone position, which is not standard protocol. He testified that in this situation, they were told there may be a weapon that was used to injure an officer, so they had a vested interest in finding it. During his time in the dorm, he testified that he did not observe any staff damaging state or incarcerated individuals' property, nor did he hear any racial slurs. He did not return to Unit 4H until a few weeks later. Lieutenant Surprenant confirmed that this process was what the superintendent wanted. On cross-examination, Lieutenant Surprenant testified that he became aware of an ongoing investigation prior to July 6th into why Officer Call was injured. Captain Adamik informed him of the investigation on July 5th. He testified that initially it was thought to be a slip and fall, but more information had surfaced, leading them to believe it may have been an assault on staff, and they were trying to gather facts to either support or refute that belief. Officer Christopher Hayes, a CO at Mid-State Correctional Facility, participated in the dorm frisk of Unit 4H on July 6th. He testified that during the lineup that morning, the only information provided was that they would be frisking the 4H dorm. He stated that the supervisors did not provide any specific purpose for the search. While on the bus to 4H, the only instruction he received was that it would be a standard frisk, as usual. Officer Hayes testified that upon entering the dorm, he worked his way down the hallway, pulling incarcerated individuals out into the hall. He stated that the individuals got on the floor without seeming surprised. He further testified that no significant contraband was found during the search. Officer Hayes stated that he did not use force against any incarcerated individuals, nor did he witness any fellow staff members using force. He also testified that he did not destroy any property or observe any damage to state property, though he did notice a few holes in the walls, which he described as nothing substantial. According to Officer Hayes, the dorm appeared disheveled after the raid. He testified that he did not hear any staff members use racial slurs or threats against the incarcerated individuals. Officer Hayes acknowledged that he had been disciplined for falsifying documentation prior to the dorm search. Kenneth Shortt. Officer Shortt testified that he is a CO at Mid-State CF and has worked for DOCCS for 23 years. Similar to the other officers, Officer Shortt testified that he did not destroy or damage any state or incarcerated individual's property on the day of the dorm frisk, nor did he observe any of his fellow staff members doing so, although he did recall seeing maybe 2 or 3 lockers tipped over. Officer Shortt further testified that he did not see any of his fellow staff members use a fire extinguisher to break a lock on a locker. He stated that the dorm was messy after the raid. Officer Shortt testified that he did not direct any racial slurs toward incarcerated individuals, nor did he hear any fellow staff members use racial slurs. He also stated that he did not threaten any incarcerated individuals and was wearing his name tag during the frisk. Officer Shortt testified that he was disciplined as a result of the dorm frisk. He described his disciplinary action as related to a signature on certain frisk forms that were not his. He accepted the charges and was placed on probation. Officer Shortt testified on cross-examination that he was aware Officer Call had been injured prior to the dorm frisk. However, he claimed he was not aware if Officer Call's injuries were discussed during the lineup before the raid. Officer Shortt stated that he could not recall his thoughts about Officer Call being assaulted by incarcerated individuals at the time. Officer Shortt was then asked about his Q&A from December 6, 2016. During that Q&A, he had been asked what the events or circumstances were which caused the facility to frisk 4H on that day, and had previously responded, probably the assault of the officer. Officer Shortt testified that he was never informed that 27 lockers were broken during the dorm frisk and claimed not to have seen any damage to the walls during the raid. When asked what steps he would have taken if he had seen an officer throw a chair into the wall, such as whether he would inform a sergeant, he responded, no. Officer Michael Gaffney, who works at Mid-State CF, was employed on July 6th and took part in the raid of the 4H dorm that day. He testified that while he was in the lineup room, he was not given any direction or instruction regarding the dorm frisk. Officer Gaffney also testified that he was not given any information about the purpose or reason for the dorm frisk that day, but stated that everybody knew an officer had been assaulted on the unit a couple of days prior. That morning, Officer Gaffney entered the 4H dorm and testified that he personally searched approximately 5 of the incarcerated individuals' cubes. He further testified that he did not witness any uses of force, did not damage any property, and did not witness any of his fellow staff members damaging property. He also did not hear any racial slurs or threats made against incarcerated individuals. On cross-examination, Officer Gaffney testified that the officers gathered in the lineup room prior to going to the 4H dorm, and it was at that time he first learned about Officer Cale's injury. However, he stated that learning about the injury did not make him angry. It was also noted that many of the lockers Officer Gaffney searched were reported as damaged and in need of repairs after the raid. Vincent Sullivan, Officer Vincent Sullivan, a CO at Mid-State CF with 16 years of experience at DOCS, testified that he was working at Mid-State on July 6th and participated in the dorm frisk of Unit 4H. He drove the bus to the dorm that morning and reported to the lineup room. Officer Sullivan testified that he was not provided any information or direction from supervisory staff regarding the dorm frisk while in the lineup room, and he could not recall any supervisors present. He approximated that he had participated in about 20 previous dorm frisks. Officer Sullivan's understanding of why the dorm was being frisked that day was that an officer had been assaulted 2 days earlier, and they were searching for weapons. Officer Sullivan testified that he did not find any contraband that morning and did not utilize any force on incarcerated individuals, nor did he witness any force being used by fellow staff members. He further testified that he did not destroy any state property and did not observe any other staff members destroying state property. Although he did not notice any holes in the walls on July 6th, he claimed to have noticed holes in the walls prior to that date. Officer Sullivan stated that while the dorm was messy after the search, nothing in particular stood out about the dorm frisk. He testified that he did not direct any racial slurs toward incarcerated individuals, nor did he hear any staff members use racial slurs or threats toward the incarcerated individuals that day. On cross-examination, Officer Sullivan testified that prior to July 6th, he learned about Officer Cowell being injured. He became aware of the incident on July 3rd when he responded to the 4H dorm during his tour of duty that evening, as he was a roundsman. When he arrived at the 4H dorm on July 3rd, he observed a mess, and Officer Cale was in his office with blood on the floor. Officer Cale was being attended to by security at that point. Officer Sullivan was asked whether he believed Officer Cale had been assaulted by incarcerated individuals, and testified that he did, and he did not change his opinion about how Officer Call was injured after that. When he appeared at the lineup on July 6th, he was still under the impression that Officer Call had been assaulted by incarcerated individuals in Unit 4H. He testified that he still feels that way as of the date of his testimony at trial. Officer Sullivan further testified that between July 3rd and July 6th, he did not discuss his opinion about Officer Call being assaulted with other COs. He stated that when he reported to work on the morning of July 6th and attended lineup, he did not discuss Officer Call's injury with anyone and did not inquire as to how he was doing, despite having last seen him bleeding from the head on the floor. Officer Sullivan claimed not to have been curious about Officer Cale's condition. He testified, "I heard people talking," when asked if he heard others discussing what had happened to Officer Call. He initially stated that he was not talking about it himself, but later elaborated and testified that he overheard other officers discussing it, though he claimed he didn't really know what they were saying. Officer Sullivan then testified that the officers at the lineup, including those who were going to conduct the dorm frisk, were talking about Officer Cale. When asked if it was a topic of conversation, he responded, "Probably, for most people." Prior to the raid, Officer Sullivan testified that officers were discussing Officer Cale because it was the first time many of them were back together after the July 4th holiday. Officer Sullivan stated that the officers were saying that Officer Call had been cut by an incarcerated individual. The following exchange occurred regarding the mood among the officers prior to the raid. Q. That must have made them pretty angry. What do you think about that? A. I would say yes. Q. Who was the angriest? A. I don't know. Q. What about Sergeant O'Neill? Was he angry? A. He was upset. Q. Yeah. Any other supervisors there? A. I recall. No. Q. So, just Sergeant O'Neill, but was he more upset than the officers, or equally upset, or just the court? Are you able to give an opinion based on your awareness of Officer O, Sergeant O'Neill, that morning, at how upset he was? Officer Sullivan. My opinion? The court. Yeah. Officer Sullivan. I believe everybody was very upset, but that's my opinion. Q. And Officer Sullivan, that's based on you were there. That's based on your observations of them, right? A. Correct. Q. You were upset too, I bet, right? A. I was.
If you found value in this video, consider joining Critical Conversations and becoming a member. We have two membership tiers, both of which are less than the price of a cup of Starbucks coffee. Very inexpensive, and that allows you exclusive member-only live streams for the first tier happening once a month, and for the second tier happening twice a month. If not, no worries. what you can do to support the channel. Like the video, comment in the video, share the video, and if you are not already, become a subscriber. My goal is to give you honest and direct feedback and dig deeper than what the mainstream media is telling you. Thank you. Take care. God bless. See you next time.